It was a chilly autumn afternoon when I first noticed the shed in my new backyard. The previous owner had left it behind, and it looked old and worn. I had just moved into this small house in a quiet neighborhood, and everything felt strange and unfamiliar. As I unpacked boxes and set up my new home, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shed was watching me. It sat in the corner of the yard, hidden behind a cluster of trees. The paint was peeling, and the door hung slightly open, creaking in the wind. My curiosity grew stronger every day. Maybe I should take a look inside, I thought to myself. But each time I approached, I hesitated. What if there was something dangerous in there? The neighborhood was safe, but my gut told me something was off. One evening, I sat on my porch, sipping hot tea and enjoying the quiet. Suddenly, I heard a noise coming from the direction of the shed. It sounded like someone was inside. My heart raced. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly walked toward it, my footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound brave. "Is anyone there?" No answer. Just silence. I hesitated at the door, feeling the cold air bite at my skin. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door open wider. The hinges squeaked loudly, making me jump. Inside, it was dark and dusty. I shone my flashlight around, revealing old tools, broken furniture, and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. But there was no one there. I sighed in relief, feeling foolish for being scared. Just as I turned to leave, I noticed something in the corner, something that made my blood run cold. A figure stood there, hidden in the shadows. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. It was a man, his face obscured by the darkness. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice shaking. The man stepped forward, and my heart dropped. He looked dirty and unkempt, his clothes ragged and torn. His eyes were wide and wild, and he grinned at me in a way that made my skin crawl. "Just a friend," he said softly, his voice low and raspy. "I've been waiting for you." Panic surged through me, and I turned to run. I bolted out of the shed and sprinted toward the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. Who was that man? Why was he in my shed? I quickly grabbed my phone and called the police, my hands trembling as I recounted what had happened. "Stay inside and lock all your doors," the officer said. "We'll send someone to check it out." I didn't move from my spot by the door. Every noise outside made me jump. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance. Relief flooded over me, but I still felt a gnawing fear. The officers arrived quickly, and I rushed to meet them at the front door. I explained everything, my voice shaking as I spoke about the man in the shed. "We'll check it out," one of the officers said, his expression serious. They walked to the shed, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I watched from the window, my heart racing as they disappeared inside. After what felt like an eternity, the officers emerged. One of them looked at me, his brow furrowed. "There's no one in there. Just some old junk." "What?" "But I saw him," I protested, fear rising again. "He was right there." "We understand this is frightening," the officer said gently. "But there's no sign of anyone. We'll keep an eye on the area tonight. You should be safe." I nodded, though I didn't feel safe at all. I locked all the doors and windows, shutting the curtains tight. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the house. Around midnight I heard it again, the soft sound of tapping. My heart sank as I recognized it. It was coming from the shed. The tapping continued, persistent and unsettling. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to know what was going on. Slowly, I crept out of bed and grabbed my flashlight. I moved toward the back door, feeling the chill of the night air as I opened it. I took a deep breath and stepped outside, my flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. As I approached the shed, the tapping stopped. I hesitated, feeling a wave of dread wash over me. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. I stood there for a moment, listening to the night sounds around me. The wind rustled the leaves, and somewhere a dog barked. But there was no sign of the man. Summoning my courage, I pushed the door open again. This time, I was ready. The light from my flashlight flickered as I entered, revealing the same old tools and dust. But there was no one here. I felt foolish for coming back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I shone the flashlight around one more time, and that's when I saw it, a scrap of paper lying on the ground. I picked it up and read the scrawled words. "I know you're here." My heart raced. Who had written this? I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. A soft laugh echoed from the corner of the shed. I whipped around, shining my flashlight toward the sound. The man was there again, stepping out from behind a stack of old crates. "You shouldn't have come back," he said, his voice low and threatening. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a pile of junk. "Stay away from me!" I screamed, my voice filled with terror. He took a step forward, his grin widening. "You're the only one who can see me," he said. "I've been waiting for someone to find me." Without thinking, I turned and ran, bolting out of the shed and back toward the house. I slammed the door behind me, locking it once more. My heart raced as I leaned against the door, gasping for breath. What did he mean? Why was he waiting for me? I felt trapped, my mind racing with fear and confusion. I had to do something. I called the police again, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. They assured me they would send someone right away, but it felt like an eternity waiting for help. When the officers arrived, I rushed outside to meet them. "He's back! He's in the shed!" I shouted, pointing wildly. "We'll take care of it," one officer said firmly. They approached the shed once again, and I watched with bated breath. This time, they emerged quickly, their expression serious. "There's no one here, ma'am. We've searched thoroughly," the officer said, his voice calm but firm. "But I saw him. He was right there," I insisted, feeling desperate. "Are you sure it wasn't just your imagination?" another officer asked gently. "It's common to feel this way after a scary experience." I shook my head vigorously. "No! He was real! Please, you have to believe me." The officers exchanged glances, and I could see their concern. "We'll keep a patrol near your house tonight," one said. "If he comes back, we'll be here." After they left, I felt more alone than ever. I locked all the doors and windows again, feeling the weight of fear settle over me like a heavy blanket. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every sound. I kept my phone close, ready to call for help again if I needed to. Just as dawn broke, I finally drifted off, exhaustion taking over. A loud crash woke me hours later. My heart raced as I scrambled out of bed, my mind racing. The noise had come from the direction of the shed. I rushed to the window and pulled back the curtain, peering out. The shed door was wide open, swinging on its hinges. I felt a chill run down my spine. The man was gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he would return. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I decided to investigate. I slipped on a jacket and grabbed my flashlight again, cautiously stepping outside. The morning air was crisp, and the sun barely peeked over the trees. As I approached the shed, my heart raced. I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. It was empty. The space felt even darker than before, and the air was thick with dust. But as I scanned the room, I noticed something new, a footprint on the floor, leading out of the shed. It was muddy, and I felt a surge of dread. Someone had been here recently. Following the prints, I stepped outside, and they led away from the shed and into the woods behind my house. I hesitated, fear gnawing at me. Should I follow? What if he was waiting for me? But my curiosity won out. I took a deep breath and began to walk, following the prints carefully. They wound through the trees, and I felt more and more anxious with every step. After a short walk, the prints led me to a clearing. I stopped short when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were more footprints scattered across the clearing, surrounded by thick bushes and overgrown grass. In the middle of the clearing stood a small wooden structure that resembled a makeshift cabin. My heart raced. It was the kind of place you read about in horror stories, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to the man in the shed. I approached cautiously, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But curiosity drove me forward. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open, the wood creaking ominously. Inside, the light from my flashlight revealed a small room filled with old furniture and broken items. Then I saw it, a wall covered in photographs, each one capturing moments from my life. There were pictures of me moving in, unpacking boxes, and even some of me sitting on my porch. My stomach churned as I realized the man had been watching me all along. Panic set in, and I stumbled back out of the cabin. I needed to get away from here. As I turned to run, I heard a voice behind me. "Did you like what you saw?" I spun around, and there he was, the man from the shed, standing in the doorway of the cabin, his grin wider than before. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, my voice shaking. "I just wanted to get to know you," he replied, his tone unsettlingly calm. "You're special. I've been waiting for someone like you." Without thinking, I bolted into the woods, branches whipping against my arms as I ran. I could hear him laughing behind me, his footsteps echoing through the trees. I didn't dare look back. I had to escape. I ran until my legs burned, pushing through the underbrush until I stumbled back into my backyard. I raced inside the house and locked the door, my heart racing. I grabbed my phone and called the police again, my voice filled with desperation. "They're coming," I told myself, pacing the living room. "They have to stop him." Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the sound of sirens. When they finally arrived, I ran outside to meet them, frantically explaining everything. "Please, you have to believe me," I pleaded. "He's in the woods. He's been watching me." The officers nodded, their expressions serious. "We'll search the area," one assured me. "Stay inside and lock your doors." I watched as they disappeared into the trees, hoping they would find him. My heart sank as I thought about the photographs and the way he had watched me. It was terrifying. After a long wait, the officers returned, shaking their heads. "We didn't find anyone," one said, "but we'll keep a patrol in the area. We take these reports seriously." Frustration bubbled within me. "But he's out there. He could come back." "We understand, but there's nothing we can do without evidence," another officer said gently. "If he comes back, call us immediately." I nodded, feeling defeated. They left, and I locked all the doors and windows once again. I spent the night on edge, jumping at every sound, convinced that the man would return. The days turned into weeks, and I never saw him again. Life slowly returned to normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I avoided the shed in the woods, always feeling that chill creeping down my spine. One day, I decided to confront my fear. I wanted to take back control. I grabbed a friend and headed to the shed, determined to clean it out and make it my own. As we worked, I felt a sense of empowerment. But when I opened the door, I froze. The shed was empty, except for the old junk. However, something felt different. I noticed the wall where I had found a scrap of paper had fresh marks on the floor, like someone had been dragging something heavy. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to my friend, but he shook his head, looking puzzled. "Maybe we should leave," he suggested, glancing around nervously. I nodded, feeling the fear creep back in. We quickly finished cleaning and left, but I couldn't stop thinking about the man. That night, I had a vivid dream. I found myself back in the clearing, standing in front of the cabin. The man was there, smiling, waiting for me. "You shouldn't have come back," he said, his voice echoing. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. The dream felt so real, and I knew I couldn't let fear control my life anymore. I called the police once more, asking for advice on how to secure my home. They suggested installing cameras and stronger locks. I took their advice seriously, wanting to protect myself. As I set up the security system, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe this would help me feel safe again. One night, as I sat watching TV, I heard a strange noise outside. My heart raced, but I was prepared. I grabbed my phone and checked the cameras. My breath caught in my throat when I saw a figure near the shed, moving quickly. I called the police immediately, my hands shaking. "He's back! I can see him on the camera!" I cried. "Stay inside and keep the doors locked," the officer instructed. "We'll send someone right away." I watched the live feed, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure moved closer to the house, and I could see it was him, the man from the shed. Just as he reached the back door, the police arrived, sirens blaring. I could hear the commotion outside as they confronted him. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I heard the officer shout, "Get on the ground!" I rushed to the door, peering out as they took the man into custody. He looked back at me, his eyes wide with surprise, and I felt a rush of emotions, fear, anger, relief. As the officers escorted him away, one turned to me. "We found evidence that connects him to other incidents in the area," he explained. "You did the right thing by reporting him." I nodded, tears of relief filling my eyes. I could finally breathe again. The man who had haunted my life for so long was gone. In the weeks that followed, I worked to regain my sense of normalcy. I took down the security cameras and spent more time outside, enjoying my yard and the fresh air. I even painted the shed, turning it into a cozy storage space. Though the memories of those terrifying moments lingered, I knew I had faced my fears. I had taken control of my life again, and nothing could take that away from me. The man in the shed was just a shadow of the past, and I was ready to move forward. Every time I walked by the shed, I felt a sense of pride. I had survived a nightmare, and I would never let fear dictate my life again.